Yo, internet! Welcome back for another installment of, Anyway, what I got going on today is doing camber arms in the rear of the Fusion, because this thing, without them being lowered on the BC coils, had like -3 camber. Might be okay for street driving, but what I've come to discover is that you don't get a lot of grip in a drift car, and your tires last about half as long. So I'm going to show you what I've done so far. I've kind of missed out on documenting this, but I'll catch you up. Okay, like I said, put in some camber arms. I was really impressed at how easy this was to do, this was to install. Steeda was kind enough to send me a set of their arms, very nice billet pieces, and it takes, literally besides taking the wheel off, 2 bolts, one here at the knuckle, one in the subframe. Even with this crazy swap, it was super easy to do the swap, mainly because Ford has those little tabs. You might see them on some other, I can't really see it, but you guys might know what I'm talking about, where the bolt holds itself. It's got a little tang on the side so that when you turn the nut, it keeps itself in place and you can tighten it as need be. So where I'm at now is tightening up the lock nuts for the adjustability here. So you loosen up these 2 lock nuts and turn this so that the knuckle moves in or out to whatever you want to put the rear camber on. I got it to about 0.2 positive. So, and what I did was I wanted to see what the camber does when you weigh it down or squats, because when this thing's drifting, it's getting down, right? And just like kind of like a drag car would. And it moved with my big ass on the trunk there. I think I recorded about 0.2 degrees negative, so I wanted it to be positive statically. And so when it's getting down, it gets to 0. So also my clearance here also has to play with that. So I would go more positive if I could, but I also need my wheels and tires to fit, which have been a little bit of a struggle too with the stock body and the wider Mustang track. So what I'm gonna do now is lock the other side and then start my 4-wheel alignment. Okay, so I want to show you how I measure camber, essentially. So I take my little angle finder here, I got off Amazon a while ago, and zero it on the floor. Okay, so it has a magnet on it, and I use the brake rotor as my mounting surface to see what we're dealing with. So it's kind of tricky because you gotta, after 90 degrees, it'll go back to like 89 or whatever. So you kind of gotta see which way it's pointing with that little like teeter-totter thing. So as I'm pointing, see now that's negative. Now I'm gonna let this sit so it's actually sitting, because it doesn't sit on the rotor perfect. This thing's been gouged a little, so I want to find a little better surface. So it's sitting at what seems to be, oh, what's up, Marty? Like 0.21 degrees positive. I know that because when I push the thing to simulate more negative, it goes closer to 90. So the other side actually is closer to 0. So I might, not sure what I'll do yet, but I think I'm going to reset this thing, and yes, I know, and recheck it just to make sure before I start adjusting things, because it did take a little while to get this zeroed in last night, but it's not too bad if I have to redo it. Alright, you saw me set up my toe plates, and last time I touched the rear toe, my buddy Alex Anderson actually had a string gauge, and we set that up so the thrust angle was all right. So he's out here right now. I don't have a string set up, but what you can do to compensate is take your measurement, and I'm not going to get too into this, but adjust the side, like how much you want to take out of it or put into it, do that half on one side and do the other. So it had, I don't know if it moved. I'm guessing it's from moving the camber. It had about 1/8 toe out, and I had this thing set at like 3/8 towed in, trying to get grip because I had -3 degrees of camber on each side. So now we're at 0. Measured it, it was actually towed out. So now I dialed it back and forth, tightened the lock nuts, and now it's measuring just about 1/8 toe in, which I think is a good baseline. And so now I can move on to the front and have some fun up there. All right, so I put my angle gauge on the rotors, and this side had like a degree more negative than the other side. And that side had like 6, 7 or so, which is a little much even for a drift car. This one was like a whole degree, 7. It was like not a full degree, but then I wanted to see what the toe was, put the plates on, and it was actually towed out by like close to 1 inch. So some things might have shifted, but I'm gonna address the camber. I already took the strut out and adjusted my BCs out a little bit. It's kind of a guessing game, so they kind of go in and out, and then I'll check it with my angle gauge once I'm done putting the wheel back on and whatnot to get front to side even, so everything's all squared up. And then if it's what I like, then I'll move on to adjusting the toe. All right, so luckily for a shot, got the camber within a couple few degrees of each other. This is actually like 6.65 negative, and this one is right where I checked it last, like 6.6. So I'm a little leery though. I'm gonna double check after I do the toe and double check the camber numbers and go from there. So I'm gonna, so wheel's already centered. So what I'm gonna do, I'm not sure which, this is where a string gauge would be nice to have, right? So I can see which wheel is actually more towed out at this point. So I'm gonna put my money on this one. You might not be able to pick this up in the camera. I've been pretty lucky having a good eye at this stuff. But with the camber mount, it's even more difficult to see. So it is what it is. So I'll just adjust it slowly and keep rolling it back and forth, see where the wheel centers up. And even then the wheel, until you take it for a ride, you don't know where it's gonna land. And it's not a street car, but I do like to have that reference. Like if it's straight up and down, then I know that kind of that the alignment hasn't moved per se. Like if the wheel moves, you know, 1/8 of a turn, then I know something kind of got messed up during drifting and whatnot. All right, things are kind of going a little too well. I gave both inner tie rods about half a turn to bring the toe in, and it's in at like a 1/16 out. So by the time I juicy food around with the jam nuts and tighten them up, it's probably gonna end up being around there, but they will take up some slack, so it might coming in zeros, which is where I usually like it. So yeah, don't think there's much else to show you, except I want to thank Steeda again for those arms and getting this dialed in. And hopefully I'll see you guys at FuelFest coming up on April 4th. So they're giving away 75 ride-alongs, so it's first come, first serve. So if you want to get a ride-along in either this car or Matt Haugen's car, he'll be out there drifting as well. Show up April 4th. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.